Hmm? Ah!
You're listening to the Run for Your Lives podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And this is the Run for Your Lives podcast.
This episode is something a little different, doing a special episode, I guess you can call that. Something quick, easy, fun for those weeks that we just are so busy. We don't have time necessarily to prep and go through a whole movie. So we just have a little fun conversation, and we like doing these from time to time. So this week, Daphne actually came up with the idea, and I enjoyed it, and I think it's gonna be a fun little conversation. Talk about, movies and things that scared us as children.
Yes. It's gonna be great. I'm really intrigued and interested to know what you picked.
Yeah. So we have our, top 5 lists. We'll go back and forth. They're not any specific 5 to 1 order. I have them in a specific order of how I want to present them, but no one is greater over another. I have a feeling we're coming at this from 2 very different viewpoints. I don't know. Cause I came up with 4 immediately when she texted me this idea, and then I didn't come up with a 5th one finally until right before this. So,
okay.
Cause there's nothing by the time I was watching anything that was quote unquote scary movies, I was already old enough to know that, oh, I like this.
Yeah, I was not. There was definitely a turning point for me. And my mom probably wishes that she never introduced me to horror films this way. But it did help me understand horror so much more. And I embraced it after that.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, not a single one of my 5 could be considered a horror movie, I don't think.
Really?
Yeah, no, they're all not horror movies. But giving some spoilers so people can figure out maybe a little bit. Out of my 5, 3 of them we have covered on this podcast. And yeah, and so if you could think back to when we covered those episodes, I talked about the scenes, because it's usually just certain scenes and certain things that gave me nightmares and stuck with me. I kind of went that route. So
okay. All right, well that helps. Well, mine come from, they are scary things, but also it's specific things within the movie that scared me. Mm-hmm. Because I found with horror movies from that time, they didn't completely scare me, but there was something that stands out, and it's just no, 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 I don't want this. No, Yeah, so I have a few, that relates to some of it, too. So, since I came up with the idea, I'm going to make you go first.
Oh, fun. Okay. Let's see. Let's start with a basic, easy one. 1996 Twister.
You were scared by something in Twister. Okay.
Yeah, we talked about it, when we covered it very early on. It's definitely right from the get-go on that movie. It's the opening scene of Joe's dad being sucked up right out of the cellar, hanging onto the door. Haunted me for a very long time. It's just, a very intense way to start that thing. And of course, we've talked about it when talking about that movie and other things. Living in Texas, living in the South, tornadoes are a very common occurrence at certain parts of the year. So, we all grow up with a healthy fear, yet intrigue with, tornadoes. So, yeah, it's, a choice that I made. Yeah, just so then watching that movie, like that scene starts it, and then just the whole thing has that like air of it because it's literally close to home, for a weather phenomenon that's regularly happens here where I live. So even to like nowadays, because I mean, you see me, I've had like tornado like warnings and sirens go off while we're recording this podcast, like at least 2 or 3 times this past like season. So like it happens.
So odd. I remember when we were recording Cocaine Bear, there was stuff going on outside your house. Yep. Oh my gosh.
And then I think when Rima was on, so maybe for Jaws 2 or something, I also had to I was late because there was literally a tornado down the street and I was filming it instead of in here talking to you guys. So, and taking pictures of it. So there was that. Yeah.
Priorities, Pake. Priorities. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely like as an adult, I'm like more, I don't know. So it's not that I'm like not scared of tornadoes because they absolutely still can be very devastating and destructive but with warnings and things in place most of the time, it's like unless you're right there in the path of it, like you can't go stand outside in the front yard and take a video of it.
True. We don't really have anything like that in Maine. I mean, we have potential for hurricanes, and since I grew up on an island, there was potential for that, and I remember taping the windows and stuff, but not tornadoes. I mean, there have been random talks of like earthquakes, which I did feel one that we had after I first moved into my house, but it's not common to have that type of thing happen here. So yeah, that is a good one to start with.
Yeah, so it's just
well, my first one has nothing to do with movies. It has to do with something that terrified me, and I was so scared of it that I couldn't even have the TV on. I didn't want to be around it. And that was Michael Jackson's Thriller video. You're going to learn some things in this episode about me.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is something I don't think I've talked about on this podcast. I was really afraid of horror in general. The only exposure that I really had to it was at slumber parties. And there's one movie I'll bring up that we watched at a slumber party that freaked me out. I would not be the horror fan that I am today had my mother not looked at the situation and said, "You should not be afraid. This is a music video," and made me sit down and watch the making of Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Yeah.
After I watched that, it was all horror all the time. I wanted to watch every horror movie that there was. I wasn't afraid of them. It was before that I was really, afraid. But yeah, my mom, she probably wishes that she never did it, because when we would go to rent movies, I would always want something scary, and they had such a selection that I didn't have to watch the same movie more than once. Although with Dawn of the Dead from 1978, I did watch that quite a few times.
Yeah.
But yeah, she actually, she made me watch it, and after that, it was much better. I wasn't afraid anymore. I still got a little squeamish, but it wasn't any fear. I wasn't afraid of the movies anymore. I kind of embraced it. And I'm grateful for that love of horror that I have. So yeah, that's number 5.
So you mentioned watching things several times. And because there's several on my list that, even though they count as scared me as a kid, I also still as a kid would watch them over and over and over again, even though, because again, it's mostly specific scenes or certain things, and I will dig into those when we get to
you
them.
You can skip those too. You could always skip over it. And there are some scenes in some movies I still will. But the thing with Thriller is it was such an iconic music video. It was played every single day at 3:00 p.m. and any other time they wanted to, so you were never safe. If you were scared, if it scared you, you didn't know when it was coming. anytime, because it was very popular. But yeah, I credit my mom with saving me from being afraid of horror by making me watch that.
Nice. And one thing that's going to be interesting about these lists is I don't think there's really going to be any overlap just because our childhoods were in a little bit of different time periods. So
yes.
It's going to be, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be different.
Yeah.
Which makes me happy because I want to know. Right. I'm so curious. Even though you say that you've talked about it before, Pake, we've recorded like over 130 episodes. Yeah. And I can't remember every single word that you have said. So, yeah, I'm interested.
All right. So this next one was the one that was like the last minute, like, let me throw it in there because it's literally the only thing I can think of. So it's a fun little side thing here. But I had to make it follow that first one, Twister. And that is because it is Night of the Twisters.
Okay.
It is a TV movie from 1996. It actually aired 3 months before Twister was released.
Okay.
It was released. It aired in February of 1996 when Twister came out in May that year. So I don't know if they were like getting ahead of the curve, if it was like just happenstance. I don't know.
I wonder if it's the one I'm thinking of. Do you remember who's in it?
Yes, it stars Devon Sawa, John Schneider, and Lori Hallier.
It is exactly the one I'm thinking of. Okay, that's great.
Yes. And I include it for the exact same reasons as Twister. So very close to home. But also this one was a little different because it also had a little bit of the Impossible vibe, as the plot of this movie focuses a lot more on a family trying to reunite with each other during the disaster.
Yeah.
But again, I watched it a lot. It's a much more family-friendly movie. It's extra. There's got some extra cheese. It's not as well liked at all, and I haven't seen it in years since I was a kid, and it probably does not hold up.
Probably not.
And I do remember that it is way less scientifically accurate than even Twister was. There's some ridiculous nonsense.
A lot of the made-for-TV ones are much less scientific.
Yes.
They're not given the budget to research as much as, a big blockbuster is. Even the big blockbusters, we've talked about it, they've gotten it wrong. So, yeah.
Yeah, but it still gave me nightmares, and I would keep watching it over and over again anyway out of morbid interest, right? Except for one night we were over at like a family friend's house, and we decided to put it on. And I started watching it, and then the weather started getting bad outside, and I immediately turned it off because it was making me way too anxious. And I was like, no, I can't deal with that at the same time.
Not when it's happening in the real world.
No. I was like, no, we're not doing this.
No.
When we watched Wizard of Oz instead, which still starts with a tornado, so I don't know why.
How on earth did you... I mean, come on. Mm-hmm. Wizard of Oz was creepy. That had creepy moments in it.
It
that
did.
witch, oh my gosh. She was scary. I was glad when she got the bucket. It was good.
So there's that one. And I promise, no more tornadoes after this.
No more tornadoes, okay. I was starting to wonder if there's going to be a theme.
Yeah, it's just all tornado movies.
Okay. All right. So, my next one is actually an animated film. One that I love and have watched a million times. However, it was creepy and scary at various points, especially this harpy. There was a harpy in it. It was, and the Red Bull. It is The Last Unicorn, which you probably never even heard of.
I think I've heard of it.
You should definitely watch it. Knowing your love of animation, I think you would like it. It's good. Yeah, so it's just basically about this unicorn who goes on a quest to figure out why there aren't any other unicorns there. And she's the only one. And Mia Farrow does the voice, and it's quite an experience, but there were several parts. The end there's that she has to face down this Red Bull, and it just scared me. I was just so scared. And then there's another part that involved the harpy, where the unicorn tries to free everybody else from this, like, circus sideshow, because the woman that runs it has put spells on everybody, so they all look like they are much scarier than they are.
Mm-hmm.
Except the harpy's real. And so she lets the harpy out and it kills the old woman, which is a wonderful time, but it's freaky, scary when you're like 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So that is, I really liked it. I've watched it a bunch of times. My brother and sister, I remember the three of us watching it a lot. But, it's not one I'll show my nieces for a while. Definitely not. I don't want them to be scared.
That's great. I kind of took a similar approach with something, but I think that's going to be my last one. I'm going to wait on it.
Okay.
So yeah, because let's get these other two out of the way that I have already talked about in the past. We've covered these movies. But the next one will stay, it's not a tornado, but we'll stay in the realm of natural disasters. Dante's Peak.
Okay.
Again, something also mentioned when we covered it. Volcanoes and earthquake and stuff and everything falling apart. All of that is very much less of a threat here. Actually kind of a non-existent problem for me, if I'm honest, if I'm home. However, as is the case with, like practically all my picks, it's the certain scenes. And I know I mentioned it and I talked about it in that episode. It is the scene of the grandmother, Ruth, getting out of the water to push the boat back to the dock, and then the damage she sustains from that killing her. I swear I cried so much as a kid, and it emotionally scarred me, possibly for life, to where even, 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago when we covered the movie, that scene was still really hard to get through.
Yeah, I can see that it would be. Yeah, that scene is still rough for me, too, to watch.
Yeah, my grandma passed away a couple years ago, but me and her were like the same person in a lot of ways. We were very close. And so anything like that in movies and shows, I always just saw her in that role and in that spot. And it made it extra hard, even to where you've watched all of Better Call Saul. So it's not like a big spoiler, but there's this kind of like arc where Saul is scamming these like old ladies in this, retirement home.
Village. Yeah.
And he ends up pinning, all this money and everything goes to this one lady, and then we watch her friends like turn on her and like treat her bad.
Hard.
It was the hardest because that she looked and sounded and acted so much like my own grandmother that like it was hard to watch. Like I was like, I just, again, even then, like in more recent times, I just put her in that role and like I'm crying watching Better Call Saul because this poor old lady just wants friends and doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah. Because you connect to it because of your grandmother. Yeah. And because you feel that connection, it makes it more personal.
Right. And so that connection's always been there. So then, going back to Dante's Peak. So that scene's already like emotional, hard to watch. But then the way that my brain did that connection with my own grandmother, like I said, that scene is still really hard for me to get through. I don't like it at all.
Oh, man. Well, my number 3 is a movie from 1983 called Something Wicked This Way Comes. And it's everything about this movie. Everything. It is not a movie that you watch if you want any happiness whatsoever. It's about a carnival, and there's one particular scene with bugs, and I mean, what more do you want? The guy that runs the carnival, his name is Mr. Dark, and he just basically, he's just diabolical. In fact, I think he's played by the same actor who was the High Sparrow in Game of Thrones. Only he was much younger. Yeah. Yeah. You felt for the characters. You just wanted something good to happen. It was, I mean, there were moments of like friendship and family and some of the strength of the human spirit, but a lot of it is just like temptation and how in human nature you could go back and forth. There were some good parts, like people coming together to fight the darkness, but real rough, real scary. The whole thing, like from beginning to end, I was just kind of like, why am I watching this again? Yeah. Not good. Not good at all. So what do you have?
All right. The next one is a big one for you. Because don't get me wrong, I love the movie. Have always loved it.
I know exactly what it is.
Jurassic Park.
Uh-huh.
It is, the spectacle of the dinosaurs, the intense action, the incredible score. I was obsessed with it as a kid and loved it. But as a young child, there were definitely nightmares to be had. I remember, again, this was we were at like a family friend's house. There would like their other kids and stuff. And I don't even remember where it was, but they like lived just like, it was already, because they lived like out in the country, but they had ostriches. And so the sounds that the ostriches would make, and they were in the back, and there's like electric fence around them. And it all just built this like seed. And then so we watched Jurassic Park at their house right before going to bed one night. And so all night long after I went to bed, it is just nightmares of, instead of the ostriches, now they have raptors in the back and they break into the house and I'm having to run and hide from the raptors. It was this.
Oh my God. I think that's hilarious and adorable at the same time.
Yeah.
I thought it was your dream.
Is now, that this house we were staying at, that we literally were there, that they had raptors and an electric fence in the backyard, and they all got out and they broke into the house and then they were coming after us. And then I had multiple instances of raptor dreams and stuff when I would watch that movie. But then also like physical pain stuff has always been difficult for me, like Dante's Peak, I mentioned. That stuff really messes with me a lot. Absolutely as a kid, for sure. And so there was a really good span of time where every time I would watch Jurassic Park, I would have to leave the room to avoid hearing or seeing the scene where with the electric fence is turned back on and Tim is trying to climb down and gets like the ever living shit shocked out of him like really quickly. Like I couldn't do it. Like they'd get to the fence and they'd start climbing and I'd be like, I'll be back in 10 minutes. Like I could not watch it. The high level of anxiety that scene would instill in me. Even I've seen the movie so many times, I know the kid's going to be fine.
It doesn't matter.
But I can't watch it. I can't have anything to do with it. Yeah, it was.
I guess I should admit that there's a scene in Snakes on a Plane where the snake gets in and kills the cat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I skip that scene every time.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't like it. Like, it's just a me thing.
Yeah. Yeah, me as an adult, I can watch the electric fence scene with Tim and stuff. I can watch it now. Does it still instill like this deep anxiety within me? Absolutely. But at least I can sit through it now. I don't have to walk away from the TV for a while.
No. Oh my God.
But as a kid, I was like, I'm done. I'm leaving the room. And like my family just knew. They were like, yeah, he'll come back when this scene's done.
Are your brothers traumatized by this too?
I don't know. I've never really talked to them about that because I watched it a lot at my grandma's house.
Oh, so your grandma introduced you to all these creepy things. That's good.
I watched Jurassic Park over there a lot. Actually, my last one, so we'll let you go to one, and then my last one was also my grandma's house that I was introduced to this one. But we'll hold on to that one till I get there.
Okay. Well, my next one is one that I think was considered a Disney movie.
Mm-hmm.
And they remade it a couple of years ago. I think that Melissa Joan Hart actually directed the remake. This one came out in 1980. It's called The Watcher in the Woods. And if my sister is listening to this, or my brother, you know what I'm talking about. There are just all of these creepy moments throughout the movie where the girl's writing backwards on a mirror, and then it flashes to what it looks like with, forwards, and there's just all these jump scares throughout the entire movie. It's just full of jump scares. And it's got this science fiction feel to it. It's really mysterious. it's just, I loved it, but I could never watch it at night. I'm not sure I could watch it at night now. And maybe that's crazy, but again, those aren't things that you can explain away with prosthetics.
Right.
So yeah, it's a really, really fun movie as far as all the jump scares, and maybe there are people that don't like it, but for me, yeah, it's one that always stands out as scaring me a lot. And I still watched it over and over again, but yeah, it scared me. Scared my sister too.
All right. Last one for me. Because I knew this is a quick one, but I think we've learned things about each other in this episode, so that's fun.
Yeah.
And hopefully the runtime of this episode can get padded a little bit by some feedback. We need to reach out to some people, make sure we get some lists of some stuff. Because I want to hear what our listeners. So hopefully we can get some stuff, some friends of ours. I hope so too.
I want to know what scared you when you were little. What movies stand out to you? Because my number one is one I think I know I've mentioned it in group hangouts. So, yeah. I'm interested, though, in what is your number one?
Yeah.
That
so
you watched at your grandmother's house. So.
Watched there. And then, the other hint that, you mentioned The Last Unicorn. I said kind of let's go in that animation route a little bit. Because it's not a horror movie, not a thriller, not a creature feature. Nothing that qualifies for this podcast at all. In fact, it is a rated PG kids movie, technically. However, there's quite a level of blood, gore, violence, death, and fear in this PG rated kids movie. Talking about 1978's Watership Down.
Oh! Do you know I almost put that on my list? I love that movie. I love it. But I have
not seen it since then when I was a kid that first time. Because, like I said, all of the things that are in that for a animated kids movie about bunny rabbits, Little Pake was not ready for that. No. It was way more than he signed up for.
I'm not sure adult Pake is ready for it.
While watching it, I was definitely enthralled. I was gripped. I could not take my eyes off the screen. It's this epic tale of adventure and bravery and loss and sacrifice. But goddamn, if those scenes, those death scenes and the visceral visuals didn't really just fuck with me for a good while.
Well, you have too. I know how you are about going underwater and suffocation.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a big component to that at the beginning. I think it was at the beginning of the movie where that's how they were getting rid of the rabbits, is just trapping them underground. And
right. Or just the whole the ones running across the field and get shot, and it's just this whole very ethereal scene that follows it, and it's I think supposed to be kind of beautiful to watch, but all it did was just induce nightmares. Yeah, it was. That one, and I feel like maybe if I watched it again now as an adult, that it would be tamer than I'm imagining it in my brain from being a kid, but
it isn't.
I don't know.
There was a remake. I think there was a remake that was done
for Netflix. Yeah. I did watch that. I loved the Netflix miniseries that they did a couple years ago. It was really good.
Yeah.
But
I wonder what type of acid some of these filmmakers were on.
Right.
When they were creating films. Because that
is something that sticks with me of Watership Down, is the visuals, it's not only the death scenes were rough, but also just the animation style and the visuals were very trippy and very disconcerting, and were meant to keep you on edge. So
yeah, I've thought that about The Black Cauldron in particular. As a kids movie, I don't think that it should have been a kids movie. Yeah, I watched Watership Down when I was 12, I think. Mm-hmm. It was a lot to handle.
Because
it's very bloody and very. I don't think that the storytelling stuck with me like it would if I watched it now. I think there's a lot of story in it that I just didn't understand at the time.
Right, same thing. I was very young, to where I did really enjoy, like I said, the Netflix miniseries a couple years ago. As an adult watching it and being like, I see, okay, here's the story, here's what they're telling, here's the metaphors, this is great. But yeah, I don't know if any of that really connected to me as a kid. All it was just the visuals and the horrific things that I saw that kept replaying in my head, awake or asleep, for like forever. So, like...
And now that you're talking about it, you'll probably be revisited tonight with some more wonderful dreams. Oh my goodness. I almost put that on my list. Almost. Nice. Because...
Yeah, like I said earlier that there would be no crossover, and I was like, unless it's that one. Yeah. That one could be.
Because that one was incredibly trippy. Again, I feel like someone was on acid. They were on something when they were animating it. It's so intense and incredible. Maybe before its time. Bravo on that one. That's a really good one. I can't believe your grandmother introduced you to that.
I don't know if she did it on purpose. It was just on TV or just like something, and I just happened to like, I'm going to watch this. I would just spend days over there a lot as a kid with my mom being sick and my dad working and all these things. So there's a lot of times I just spent time at my grandma's, and so she just let me, like, you just sit in there and watch movies and watch TV. And then... I don't know if she knew what I was watching half the time that I was traumatizing myself with.
But you remember that you were at her house and that's where you watch it. That's because sometimes when you are watching something like this, you do remember the first time you saw it, what was surrounding it. Like the circumstances and where you were, and yeah. That's kind of like that with my number one. Was the first movie I think I watched after I learned all about prosthetics and that things were, cool and didn't have to be so scary. Kids at school had been talking about this movie, so I got my mom to rent it, and she did. Except that we couldn't pick it up until after church. So I was like, I just remember being very anxious and just wanting to get the movie and watch it because everyone had been talking about it. And it was fine, except for there were two things that happened in it. I have this problem with, like, appendages getting chopped off, like fingers or whatever. It freaks me out. It still freaks me out. And at the beginning of this movie, it's really everything that freaks me out is mostly at the beginning. Beginning of this movie, these parents are in a cafe after church, and the older kids come in and start killing everyone, either with poison or something else. And I think he was the cook or owner, gets his hand shoved into one of those meat slicers. Now, you don't see much of it, but I saw enough. And then the ringleader stands in front of the window with his old school hat on and his eyes. And that is, if anyone asks me what freaked you out as a child, I've said this a bunch of times. It is him in the window with the hat. There's something about it. John Franklin plays him. He is one of the creepiest villains I've ever seen. And that is Children of the Corn. Isaac standing in front of that window, watching all of these things happen. I can remember everything. I remember how our living room was set up at the time. Like, I can picture it all right now.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it's so vivid because I thought I was big and brave now that I had seen... I wasn't afraid of horror anymore, except this wasn't the type of horror that I, had gotten over.
Yeah.
This was something a little bit different. And there was chanting. And yeah, that movie just creeped me out as a whole, and I do not watch it. Although I've seen almost all of the sequels, including the new one that just came out, which had great ideas but didn't deliver in a good way. Yeah, that has to be my number one. Always.
Interesting. And it's funny because I'm kind of on the opposite side. I've only seen the first one, and I quite like it. And
it's great.
A movie I really enjoy. I've never seen a single movie past that. I've never watched any of the sequels. I've watched the first and stopped there.
The second one kind of passes the straight face test. There is a later one that involves Isaac coming back that's okay. I would skip the rest. I just would.
I've thought about, just marathoning through all of them and just putting myself through that just to see how it goes, but haven't done it yet.
That's time you'll never get back if you do it.
Yeah.
Do you really want to do that? I don't think you do. I don't. Yeah, I have a couple honorable mentions just because there were a few that weren't necessarily movies or were movies and they just didn't. It was just scared me a bit. 2 of them are from 1976. These are ones that I saw at slumber parties and scared the shit out of me. The Food of the Gods and Squirm, which is about worms.
I've seen Squirm, because I think, didn't Mystery Science Theater do that one? Is that the one that they did?
Yes.
I've seen the MST3K version of
it. Yeah. I don't like snakes, so it's really like worms. Yeah. And then we were put through a lot as kids in the 80s because they would have these Saturday special shows that would come on. There was one called Witch's Sister that was really creepy about this girl who thinks her sister's a witch and that the neighbor's trying to turn her into some sort of sorcerer or sorceress or whatever. And it's all taking place when it's thundering and lightning outside and the music and everything is really creepy and it tries to explain things away. Nickelodeon had a really cool series called The Third Eye. That was pretty good. Yeah, and I think that's it. Yeah, lots of things scared me as a kid, but the things that stand out are the ones I've talked about.
Nice. I didn't have any honorable mentions, because again, it took me... I had to throw Night of the Twisters in there last minute to have 5. Except for now, I just thought of something. So last minute, just right there into my head, honorable mention. Because I was thinking, I was just like, I'm thinking TV series stuff, and I was like, you throw in It, the miniseries. I was like, I never watched that as a kid. I was older when I first watched the 1990 It. But then I remembered another Stephen King, 2-part miniseries TV thing that I did see at a friend's house when I was younger. Rose Red.
I knew exactly where you were going. I'm doing this analysis in my head. Age, 2 parts. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That one was, that one was definitely scary. Again, I haven't seen it since then. I don't know if it holds up so well, if I would, be affected the same way watching it now, but definitely at a younger age, just being like, I don't know what this is, and it's terrifying. Yeah.
I've heard that Stephen King based that off of the Winchester house that's in San Jose, which I have been in.
Nice.
The house that you can just walk for days, probably inside it. I took 2 tours, I think, in there. It was very cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's my honorable mention I just thought of, just popped into my head. I was like, oh god, Rose Red. Yes, there was that.
Yeah, Rose Red. Yeah, Rose Red. Did it scare me? No. But I didn't love it anyway. I mean, I really didn't like it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's very good. I feel like we went through things that scared us.
Maybe Cujo. I'd never watched all of Cujo. I just saw little bits and pieces as a kid, and that one was... I wasn't very fond of that as a kid either. I guess to the point that I didn't watch it all the way, so maybe that one should have counted. I didn't think about it too. So Stephen King had an impact on me as a kid that I just had repressed.
As he did everyone.
Yeah.
Carrie, The Shining. Oh my gosh. I didn't watch them until much later. Late 80s when I watched those, I think.
Yeah, I saw Carrie as a kid. That one didn't bother me.
Come and play with us, Danny. When did you watch The Shining?
The Shining I didn't see until as an adult, so...
Yeah.
That one I held off on a while.
Best save for adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's... Come and play with us, Danny. Forever and ever and ever. Ugh. Yeah, no. I don't think so.
All right.
I'm really wondering what our listeners think. What?
Yeah.
What scared you? Let us know.
Throw some feelers out. Yeah, to some different groups and some different things. And if we get some good ideas. And speaking of that, there is the feedback phone. So hopefully some stuff has come through. We'll see.
That, I'm very hopeful.
Holy crap, guys. We got a lot of feedback this week. That's awesome. Maybe that's what we're just going to stop covering movies and just talk about general topics, and then all the feedback will come. That's the ticket. Now,
when I came up with this topic, I didn't realize that everyone was going to be so passionate about it.
Yeah, I think we had a really fun conversation, and then now it's going to be even more fun. We're going to go back and forth and read all of the comments and feedback that we got from a lot of listeners and friends, and yeah, so it's a lot, even not just by Run for Your Lives technical standards, but in general, it's a lot, and it's really cool. And we want to go ahead and set the standard. Yeah, if you're going to send in feedback to us, we're going to read it. We're going to engage with you guys. So
yeah,
we'll get through this. It's not going to be a whole separate feedback episode kind of length or something. But we got stuff to do. So yeah. I think you're going to kick it off today.
I am. So the first one is from Barbie. She says, The Changeling, when the empty wheelchair takes off after George C. Scott. Ghost Story, when they pull a wrecked car submerged for decades out of a lake, open the door, and it looks like a skeleton comes out, arms outstretched, probably falls out, but to my young eyes, it was moving purposefully. And Poltergeist, the tree, the clown, the bodies in the muddy pit, etc. Agree. Those are good ones. Poltergeist is one I forgot about.
Yeah, I have seen that one, surprisingly. Yeah.
Yeah, the clown, for sure. And, I'm not going to say any more because we have so many people that have sent in feedback. Maybe they brought up some of the things I'm thinking off the top of my head right now.
Yeah, we'll see. Because this next one comes from Kelly, who says, I had nightmares about aliens chasing me through the vent shafts. I think I slept on the floor of my parents' room for about a month because I was too big to join them in my bed. Poltergeist made me scared of static on TV, among other things, and Pet Sematary terrified me. The scene with the girl in the room was downright traumatizing.
Oh, God, yes. The sister. Yeah, that was a rough one. So Alma Contreras says, OMG, where do I begin? When I was about 4, my parents wanted to watch The Exorcist. My parents, being Mexican immigrants that didn't speak much English, took my little brother and me with them to the theater. Long story short, this movie traumatized me to this day. And mind you, I do really like the horror genre, but I just cannot rewatch this movie. By the way, there is a really good and scary movie called The Exorcism of God, streaming on Stars. Give it a watch. And she followed up with another message that says, I just remembered another scary flick that still gets me today. Phantasm. Have y'all watched that? I can't remember how old I was when I watched it, but I know I was young, and boy, oh boy, I had nightmares for a while. Love me some Phantasm. The tall man he's an experience.
All right, this one comes from Carmen, who says, The Exorcist, the way the girl was possessed and that green vomit and her head spinning around was horrible.
I think we can all agree with that.
Yeah.
Catherine says, I saw the scene in Leprechaun where his hand comes through the phone at around 6 years old, and it still freaks me out to this day. I loved the show, Are You Afraid of the Dark? But the episode, The Tale of Super Specs, gave me my first real jump scare, and it's one I don't care to rewatch today.
Nice. Thank you. This one comes from Randy. Says, Child's Play terrified me as a kid, partly because the main character's name was Andy, so every time Chucky said his name, it sounded like my name. Partly because there was a doll in our place that looked like Chucky, and partly, okay, maybe a lot, because a babysitter locked me in a dark room with that doll.
Oh,
I was so afraid that when the Bride of Chucky trailer came out on TV, I saw a split-second shot of Chucky's eye, I knew what it was, and I didn't watch TV for a week to avoid seeing the trailer.
Oh, that's familiar to me.
He goes on to say, I was eventually forced into horror movie immersion therapy and watched the first 3 during a TV marathon. With each sequel, I had less people with me until I watched the third alone in a dark room. I'm a fan of the series now.
You conquered your fear.
Yay!
That's
Randy.
great. Maybe you should offer up, that immersion therapy to others.
Mm-hmm.
You could administer it. I have a few friends that are terrified. I'd like for them to participate in it so I can get them over to the dark side.
Yeah.
Okay, so Erica says, sheesh, how can I pick just one? Poltergeist is a classic, and I really love this movie now, but not so much when I saw it when I was a little kid. For starters, I had the same white headboard as Carol Ann. I think this movie was the reason I made sure my closet was always closed. I did that too. The scene that scared me the most was when Marty saw the steak with maggots, and then he started to peel off his face. Yeah, very traumatizing at any age. That's one thing I always think about too. Ugh. Another scene that really freaked me out was from Superman 3. Not a great movie. When Vera, Annie Ross, was turned into a cyborg. Movie is quite cheesy, but I think her acting and this scene really holds up. Finally, the raft from Creepshow 2 was terrifying. I still don't like to swim in lakes or water I can't see the bottom of.
Lots of good choices. And then she's back. Alma Contreras. Because Alma had something to follow up to Erica's message there, where she says, yes, and when that clown doll grabbed the boy, and that face-peeling scene was the worst. Luckily, I watched this movie more on regular TV with commercials, so this scene was usually cut, thank goodness. But man, when I recently rewatched it on Max, that scene gets me every time.
That part freaks me out still. Ugh. Harrison says, I saw George A. Romero's The Crazies when I was way too young. That scene at the beginning scared the daylights out of me. Philip Kaufman's Invasion of the Body Snatchers was a close second. The idea of both these films that people close to you could turn against you was a frightening concept for a young child.
Oh, yeah.
Agreed.
Absolutely. This one comes from Barry. It says, Jaws. Ben Gardner's boat scene when Ben pops up to say hi to Hooper.
Such a simple thing, but, those jump scares, you don't realize it's coming. And yeah, it can be difficult. So Des says, here are his top 5. 5, the kid's bedroom scene from Poltergeist. 4 is The Fog. 3, walking through cornfields thanks to that dick Stephen King. Totally agree. 2, the part where they tell you that the events of Texas Chainsaw Massacre were real. And 1, the Zuni warrior doll from Trilogy of Terror. I forgot about Trilogy of Terror. I think we need to put that on the list.
We've got so much to add onto the list.
I know.
Forever and ever. We'll never stop. All right, this one comes from Megan. Says, I watched part of the original Night of the Living Dead with my dad when I was around 3 due to some horrible parental decision-making on his part. I had nightmares for years, including a dream I remember to this day of a group of zombies shambling over the hill toward the house at my grandparents' house. I was permanently scarred, and I refused to watch any scary movies at all well into adulthood. I still don't watch scary movies generally, but my love for The Walking Dead is a big outlier in my overall media consumption.
Wow. Interesting that it was Night of the Living Dead that terrified you, and yet you love The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Jason says, when the tall man came out of the mirror and grab Mike in Phantasm. That image is still with me 44 years later. I only have one thing to say to that. Boy! And anyone who's seen Phantasm will know exactly what I'm talking about.
All right, this message comes from Liz. Says, the clown in the kid's bedroom in Poltergeist.
Yeah.
I think we've had that one like 3 or 4 times now already. Poltergeist has been a really big through line.
Yes.
Maybe we need to cover Poltergeist soon, because, man.
I think so. It is really creepy. Like, there are parts of it that, yeah. Revisiting it will be good. Emma says, The Haunting, quote, whose hand was I holding? Well, that's a good question.
All right. This one comes from Ryan. Says, Aliens. Straight up thought I had a chest burster in me for weeks after I saw that movie.
True. Lisa says, Jaws. When Chrissy Watkins goes out for a late night swim, then her remains wash up upon Chief Martin. Holy hell, I was 7. I wouldn't even go in a pool for 2 years because of that movie. That movie still gives me nightmares. Nice.
Jaws has been another through line, too. Which we have done. And
we have done. Yeah.
Next one coming from Joanna says, going to my friend's 10th birthday party sleepover and watching, you guessed it, guys, Poltergeist. Didn't sleep for weeks. It was the 80s. Parents didn't worry about their child's mental well-being back then.
I didn't see Poltergeist until I was probably 13. And it still was, it was a lot. Sam says, the original It miniseries, lots of scenes to choose from for nightmares about a clown that lives in the sewers and eats children. I remember sleeping over at my grandparents' house after watching it. Their leaky toilet kept 10-year-old me up all night because I was convinced Pennywise was going to slither out of it. Also, Bram Stoker's Dracula. I was way too young when I watched it. 6-year-old me was convinced that Dracula was going to bite me in my sleep like he had that woman. So I made my dog sleep with her neck over mine at night. She was very patient. My first horror movie was Pet Sematary. I watched it as a 5-year-old with my parents. Great idea, Mom and Dad. I didn't remember much, but I was terrified another dead kid would be hiding under my bed to slice my ankles. Mm-hmm.
And this next one is from Josh. Speaking about The Boneyard, just seeing this VHS on the shelf in the horror section had me terrified enough to go anywhere near those movies.
Yeah, I think I looked at the cover of that movie, and I can see why. Megan says Poltergeist and Pet Sematary for sure. That old lady in Pet Sematary still gives me the creeps. I think she was sick, or the sister maybe. Won't watch it again.
We have a message from Jane. It says, zombies freak me out. My family loved horror movies and I've seen a lot of them. Don't care for them now. But the first time I saw Dawn of the Dead, I had nightmares for 11 years. No more zombies. I can't watch them, can't read about them. Just keep them away from me.
Wow. I wonder what show she watches that she listens to a podcast about, since I thought most of the people in the group were from like Walking Dead cast fans, so that's kind of cool. Mm-hmm. Penny says, the closing shot of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Donald Sutherland, has been with me for almost 40 years now. Yep.
And we are still going. Lots of it. It's good stuff. Thanks everybody again. Maria says, nothing more terrifying as a child than Large Marge.
Ooh. I'm surprised that more people haven't brought up Large Marge. So Jana says, Child's Play. I was sleeping over at a friend's house when I was only 8 years old, and her parents thought it was a kid's movie and let us watch it. I had nightmares for years, and I still don't like creepy dolls making eye contact with me.
This one from Monica says, oldie classic, Wizard of Oz. The flying monkeys were very scary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Richard says, 2 movies at the top of my list, The Exorcist and Nightmare on Elm Street.
Good choices. And this one from Jamie says, the bathroom scene from The Shining. Oh, God, yes. And The Exorcist.
Yes. Alicia says, oh, gosh, it had to be the clown under the bed in Poltergeist. That was terrifying, and I still cover my eyes when I watch it.
Nice. And to follow up on that, Brandy also says, Poltergeist. I probably shouldn't have watched it, but I watched all those slasher movies back then and was okay.
Mo says, you know, sometimes it is an associated experience. My brothers took dates to 2 different showings of Poltergeist. Brother who saw earlier rushed end of date to be home in time to hide and scare the other brother coming home. We'll always associate that scare with Poltergeist more than movie itself. Also, slow walk past the birds to the car right after the scene from the house of the corpse's leg. Together, those scenes give us so much fear and suspense chills.
This one from Damien says, Magic was a movie that gave me nightmares as a child. I'm not a fan of ventriloquist dummies because of it.
Oh, he might not. When we do that movie that does have the ventriloquist dummy, it's been on our list for a while, Dead Silence.
Yeah.
I don't think Damien's going to want to watch that one.
Probably not.
Jerry says, I was scared of the dark, but not being alone, but scared of something else being there. Deathly afraid of a compound fracture, still am. Afraid of mean roosters. Amityville horror movie made me afraid of seeing glowing eyes in the dark and drowning. Yikes. Yeah, when I look outside sometimes when it's dark out and I'm by myself, I get you, Jerry.
Yeah. Oh, I don't want to tangent too much, again, because there's a lot of feedback to get to, but no, it made me think of, I remember when I was a kid, when I was younger, getting into an argument with my dad and being real pissed off about something and like storming out of the house and going outside to sit in like the swing, like outside in the front yard to just like clear my mind. And I'm sitting out there and then my dad has this like shop out there in the front, yard. And I remember looking under the shop and this just pair of glowing eyes was staring at me from underneath. Forgave my dad immediately, went right back inside. We were good. I was like, you know what? It's better in there. All right.
You know what? I did something. I put a stick outside the window of my sister's bedroom. Like it was just leaning up against it. The wind was blowing it. I didn't tell her about it. She lifted the blind one night. Freaked her out. I, of course, loved it.
All right. This one comes from Gail. It says, Salem's Lot did it for me. I hung crosses in my bedroom most of my early adult life. Wouldn't watch a scary movie after that.
I know Gail, too, so I'm not surprised. Stacy said, Tim Curry in Fern Gully. I'd rather watch the Antler Queen eat an entire soccer team.
Interesting. Little Yellow Jackets reference. That's fun.
Yeah.
All right, and this one comes from Fred. Says, It's Alive from 1974. Scared the crap out of me for years. Couldn't go into the basement without thinking I'd be attacked by a killer baby.
I've seen that one, Peg. That's one I think that you need to be exposed to. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to have to work on making sure we can get that available. It's funny, I asked Chris the other day what scared him as a kid, and he said it was this chest opening scene in a movie called Videodrome, which I can't stand that movie, but it's one of his favorites. And he said that one is the thing that scared him the most. It didn't scare him away, though, because he owns that movie and he watches it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, most of my list I still watch pretty regularly. They're great movies. Just, there's certain things that stick with you.
Yeah.
All right. And lastly, we made it here. Wendy says, The Blob absolutely terrified me and scared me for life. I would lay on my bed and be certain that it was under my bed and any minute it was going to get me. But I also couldn't run for help because if I stepped off the bed, it was sure to eat me. My dad, it was one of his favorite movies, had it on in another room after that, and I freaked out and was hysterical until I was assured no one would play it in the house. I used to freak out when people had black garbage bags outside their house at night because it looked like The Blob. Still have never rewatched the original movie.
Aw, Wendy. Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
The Blob.
It's fun that you bring up The Blob, because, not the original, But we might be toying around very soon with the 1988 remake.
Yeah.
Wink, wink.
Very
soon.
Yes. I can't express enough our appreciation for all the feedback that we received with our questions for this episode. It's pretty awesome to get so many thoughts and opinions on different movies. I do think that Poltergeist 1, like that, I think was mentioned the most. I think The Exorcist got quite a few too.
Child's Play got some love.
Child's Play
got some love.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
I don't know if love is the right term to use. Got some fear.
Terror. Childhood traumatic experiences.
Yeah.
Well, if you'd like to submit feedback on any of the movies we've covered,
or now we know you're capable of it. You've set the bar high.
Yes, you have. We don't mind if you submit your feedback on a prior movie, even now. It's totally fine. All of the movies we've covered, which are like 130 something, those are all up for grabs. So if you have watched one of them and you want to send your feedback now, we are totally happy for you to do that. You can do it by finding us on Facebook and Instagram at Run for Your Lives Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at RFYL Podcast. Email us, runforyourlivespodcast@gmail.com. And if you're enjoying the show, tell your friends. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, pretty much all other podcast players, including YouTube. Go to runforyourlivespodcast.com for all the links that you're ever going to need. And give us a review on Apple Podcasts, as that is the best way to share the love and get us out there even more. We really appreciate it.
We do indeed. And speaking of sharing the love, of course I got to give those shout outs to the things going on in the podcast universe around us. My other podcast, Strange Indeed, we are in the midst of season 6 of Black Mirror right now. Our episode 3 of this season, Beyond the Sea, is up now. Go check that out if you want to. One hell of a Black Mirror episode, and one hell of a cast. To give a lot of love to the cast in that. Aaron Paul, Josh Hartnett, Kate Mara, Rory Culkin. Oh man, just stellar. Yeah, it was good to talk through that one. It's heavy, but it's a really good one. Yeah, we're having a good time jumping back into Black Mirror. So yeah, check out Strange Indeed if you haven't, and you're a fan of that. And then lots of other great stuff going on in Podcastica. Of course, The Cast of Us is back to its Walking Dead roots, covering Dead City weekly right now. Ben at the helm of that, having different guests on every week, talking about these episodes of Dead City, which has been really fun, really interesting. I wasn't sure how I'd feel about this Negan-Maggie team up, and so far I've actually really been enjoying it. So it's been an interesting ride.
Yeah.
Also, Ben is working on the Revisited podcast, him and Kristen, breaking through this final season of Lost now, as I've been rewatching every episode of Lost, talking about it as a whole, spoiler full, really breaking down the show. They are in that final stretch of the last season, but a lot of good stuff. So if you're a fan of Lost, go check that out as well. And then Yellow Jackets. Speaking of that, we got that little reference earlier. Yellow Jackets WTF podcast had a special episode this past week. It was you, Jason, and Penny talking about your top 5 most fucked up moments of Yellow Jackets as a whole, both seasons.
Yes.
I listened to that the other day at work, and it was very interesting. Lots of great choices. Lots of
I tried to think a little bit outside the realm of the more well-known ones. And then after we recorded the episode, I totally wanted to reorder mine. I was like, no, that probably should have been number 1. I don't know. But it was a fun episode. We're going to try to do more episodes like that every once in a while, just to, keep the buzz going.
Yeah, of course. And then if you are a fan of Secret Invasion over on Disney+, the Marvel show running right now, Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, then outside of the Podcastica bubble, you can go and check over our friends over on TV Podcast Industries and Panels to Pixels, both podcasts covering Secret Invasion right now. So some good Marvel coverage on some great podcasts with some great people as great hosts. Great. And yeah, that's it. But as we teased, we do have something special and fun for next week. Daphne, what are we doing?
So, we're going to cover 1988's The Blob. It's the remake from the 50s version. However, we're not doing it alone. You may remember that Pake had a little trip that he took to Santa Fe, back in April, and he connected with some really cool people. We've already had Levi on to talk about the Tremors experience, but he also met a very cool guy named Zoran Gavoyich, who works for the Dead Meat channel, and a bunch of other things. So, Pake, I'll let you explain that part of it.
Yeah. Oh, we have guests on from time to time, and so this is a guest I'm excited to have because my pal Zoran Gavoyich over from Dead Meat YouTube channel does like the kill counts and some other stuff over there. So if you are a fan of Dead Meat, hopefully you know Zoran, and I'm excited to have him on here and talk about, we gave him the choice of any movie, and he's the one that came up with The Blob. So it's great. It was a fun experience to watch that one, and can't wait to have that conversation with him and let you guys hear all that. And I think we may even try to do like a full video version of the podcast just to have something a little special, because it's a really cool guest to have just because he's got, a good reach, and he's a fun guy. He's really cool. So if you know who he is, definitely check that out. And if you don't know who he is, also check that out, because Zoran is such a cool dude. So I'm excited to have that conversation for sure.
Me too. I have no idea what I'm in for with the two of you together. I'm just going to buckle up and be ready for wherever the ride takes me.
Yeah. It could be over a cliff for all we know, but
I've got a parachute.
All right, good. Yeah.
I'm ready for that. Thanks again, everyone, for all the feedback. We really appreciate it. It was so much fun to go through and read your thoughts. Thank you for listening. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And if you have to run, you better run for your lives.
Bye-bye.